singing as loud as Steve? Well, that's going to be hard, but I'm not going to try to copy him either. So but I will try to speak without the mic. So just tell me if you can't hear it, because I think it's better. Well, once again, thank you for having me here. It has been some really wonderful day. We have a wonderful country and wonderful people. I'm not surprised by that, but it exceeded my expectations so far. So I think that. And I posted a lot of pictures back home, so there are thousands of Norwegians following this trip, and they will also follow this interview for today, because it obviously has a lot of interest that me as a Norwegian representative is coming all the way from Norway. It's 20,000 kilometers. It's a 30 hours long flight. It stops to come here to share my knowledge about human rights violations going on in Norway. And you know, it's interesting because you can feel so related to what we were talking about, even though we're on the other side of the globe. Because we could have had this event in Norway, it would have been exactly the same. We could have posted the same things to Norwegian, it would have been exactly the same. And what Steve is telling you is that if we don't combat this together, I don't think we stand a chance to succeed. And as I said, I'm a middle class guy myself, and I grew up in a happy family with a father who's a doctor and a mother's a teacher, and I have a child. And I didn't have any reason to become an enemy of my own states. But I decided very quickly that they can attack anyone. And of course, when I graduated from law and started to be interested in human rights, I became an enemy of the state, because the governments all over the world, they don't like the human rights. They try to say to their people that, of course, we defend the human rights, but really they don't. Because human rights acts are a competition tool to the government's elites. We are run by an elite, and I want you to ask me this question. Why should, and I think this is a good one, so why should a judge or a politician or a military, why should they be more worth than you? Why should they have better rights than you? Why should they have more regulations? And that's, I think, one of the primary questions you should ask yourself, because that's exactly what's happening all over the world. And we have I will call it the judicial elite, or the political elite, or the military elite, who are running these societies on the expense of you. What's happening in Norway? What's happening in New Zealand? Of course, in Norway, which is approximately the same size as the population in New Zealand, maybe a few 100,000 more. We have a child welfare budgets, annually child welfare budgets with more than 4 billion euros, meaning that it's close to 8 billion New Zealand dollars every year thrown into the system. Can you imagine? And when you put so much money into the public system, you will have a lot of people who benefit from it, right? You will have lawyers, you will have psychologists, you will have judges, you will have social workers, you will have business owners. All of these people will have their hand into this bucket of money. And when you throw so much money into the system, and that's of course one of the 7 senses in the greed part, that the people, thousands of people want that hand, well, they have to justify the use of money. And in Norway, they justify that by taking 5 to 6 children every day from the parents. I think it's close to 2,000 children getting taken away from their families, put into either foster homes or institutions every year, which is a tremendous number in a small country like Norway. And you should think that we shouldn't cope with these problems because we have so much public money, right? So why not give these money to the families instead if they have problems? So they can fix the problems. But that is not lucrative for the people who benefit from it. So you are in a conflict of interest where you have a big group of people on one side who benefit from the system, and you have the victims on the other side, where the tool for the rich or the elite. And that's why I think is one of the major questions about why should you accept what's going on with this judicial elite? Because it is exactly what Steve told you, that the judiciary is not there for you, so it's there for the states. We recently had a huge scandal in Norway involving social welfare benefits, that thousands of people were either put in prison or thousands of people were put in prison because the Norwegian judges were interpreting the international human rights standards wrong. It was quite an easy case. If you are on a social welfare benefit in Norway, you're not allowed to travel to other countries according to the Norwegian law. So if you are Norwegians traveling, for instance, from Norway to Spain while you are on social welfare benefits, you will be put in prison according to Norwegian law because you cannot leave the country. But that is illegal according to the International Human Rights Acts, which Norway has also been committed to. And since the International Acts has a higher standing than the Norwegian laws, they had to admit that they had put thousands of people in prison for no good reasons. So this, some people say this is the largest judicial scandal in Norwegian history. I disagree, because I think that the largest judicial scandal so far in the Norwegian history has been the 5 convictions in the European Court of Human Rights, all related to child welfare. Because what has the European Court of Human Rights, which is the highest tribunal in Europe, said to Norway? Well, they have said that you are systematically violating the human rights for families. And that's why I think these judgments that I showed you yesterday, especially that lower judgment, is so important for you as well, because it shows that each country in the world has an obligation, if a child is put into public care, to return that child as soon as possible. And I will read what the judges in that law says, because that applies to you as well. This is probably one of the most important legal sentences you can ever take with you in the court of law, and wherever it is. Because in that judgment it says, another guiding principle is that a care order should be regarded as a temporary measure to be discontinued as soon as circumstances permit. And that any measures implementing temporary care should be consistent with the ultimate aim of reuniting the natural parents and the child. You can look it up in that judgment I showed you yesterday. It's in the premise. We can provide it. So anyhow, so what is that judgment saying then? Okay, they realize and they acknowledge that under some circumstances it can be permitted to take a child into public care. But life is dynamic. So if the family has problems in one part of the life, it can be different in another part. So they say that it's an obligation upon each state in this world to reunite that child as quickly as possible. Which means that for families who are involved with child welfare measures, the most important thing is to make sure that the government does not have any negative things on you when the child has been taken. So that's why I think it's so important for the families to be positive. And I know that's difficult, and it may sound superficial for a lot of people, because I know the sufferings when children have been taken. But it's extremely important for the families who are involved to comply with the measures that the international tribunals have said, saying that work with your problems if you have some, make sure that your life is okay, make sure that when you claim your children or your child or your children back, you can show to the judges that you have a decent place to put them. So that's an acknowledgement that we all go through this life with problems. That's no one will escape from that. But it's also a dynamic process, saying that it's a temporary measure that should be discontinued as soon as circumstances permit. And that's the reason why Norway has been convicted so many times in the European Court. Because the government, once they have taken the child into public care, they refuse to return it back. Even though they're perfectly aware of these judgments, because this is nothing scientific about it. It's like common law. It's common sense as well. So I think that the same happens here, that you are struggling in a system that once the child has been taken into public care, it's a hell of a way to get it back, right?
Yeah.
And that's why this principle I just showed you now, this should be mandatory for all people in New Zealand to know about as well. So you can show the judges that this is actually international case law, applying also in New Zealand. And it's interesting to see what's happening in Norway while on the way, because after these 5 judgments in the European Court, finally people are starting to wake up. It took like 15 years, but at least. And I think we're maybe a few years ahead, in the battle against human rights crimes. So it's definitely I urge everyone who is fighting for the children to come back to really study that judgment, especially what is saying in these general principles in the premises 208, which I just read from now. And to make sure that all the judges, all the lawyers in New Zealand are aware of this. Because otherwise you will continue this endless circle without getting anywhere. So I think that, of course, I see a lot of similarities what I saw back in Norway, let's say 5-6 years ago, where thousands of people were meeting, we had seminars, but we didn't get anywhere because you have to have a specific plan, I mean, these things are wonderful, and it's wonderful to meet people, but if it doesn't have a specific goal to it,
yes,
it can be, or it can feel a bit meaningless. And I don't know if I would have taken the trip to New Zealand if Norway was not convicted. I think it would be difficult for me because then it would be like an endless talk. I mean, of course it would be nice, but you need to have some specific plans to what you want to achieve. So I think the major reasons why I decided to come was because I've been very encouraging by the news from the European Court stating that the people are right. I mean, we've been telling this to the government for 15 years, saying that you are not returning the children the way it should according to the international standards. We have convictions saying that we were right. But they cannot, bully us anymore, saying that we are conspiracists or stupid or whatever they say. And that's the way, the elite tries to degrade us. Say that we are stupid, inferior, they're trying to dehumanize us in a way. And I think that most of the Norwegian families I've been talking to going into a court system, they come out on the other side saying that, I don't even recognize myself. I've been dehumanized, I've been portrayed as a person I don't even know who it is. When thousands of people are saying the same thing, there's got to be something to it, right? Mm-hmm. So and the thing is that if people in Norway don't realize how important these judgments are to their own cases, if they don't realize how important it is to do the main job themselves, because you cannot put the main job to the lawyers, you have to do the main job yourself, because you know the basics, you know the fact, you know the statement of the facts. The lawyers don't. I mean, the lawyers are there to make money. That's the primary goal. So you have to stand up for yourself. And if the people are not standing up for themselves, you have a lost case.
that's right.
Staying together.
So you can bring as many human rights lawyers you will, you can bring as many judgments you will, but it's not going to take you anywhere unless you are the reasons for the fight. So I think you have to ask yourself, I did that. I was intimidated by this. I think they tried to say yesterday, I think they tried to kill me because I knew too much about the Norwegian government, that had nothing to do with child welfare. It had to do with some other extreme cases in Norway. And of course, you feel lonely, you feel small because you are up against a whole system. But you have to ask yourself, what's the primary purpose with your mission in this life? And I think if you have been attacked by a system that has caused harm to you and your family, you have an obligation to fight back. Otherwise, you will cope with injustice, it will rip you apart if you don't stand up for what you have been exposed to. And that applies all over the world. I mean, it's the same if it's in Norway, if it's in Latin America, if it's here or wherever it is. If you have been exposed for injustice, the only way you can fight that injustice is to fight back. So if you surrender to that, and of course, I understand that some people do that because they see no hope. They see that you're a single being. What chances do I have? Exactly. Waitangi. You know, I spoke to a guy on the phone this morning who had been, he sounds like a strong guy, but he's been, you know, in bed for 6 weeks because he's so depressed. That is not going to help anyway. I mean, I get depressed sometimes too, and I said to myself, the worst thing I can do is to lay in my bed. So I get up and have a walk. Do some exercise. I mean, meet some nice people. Associate, make sure you have good people surrounding you. You know, I'm allergic to negative people. I have to say that. So if I sense some negativity around me, because I'm really conflict shy on the private, because I'm fighting every day, you know, with the government. So you need to have some positive aspects as well. So I really back off when I can sense some negativity. Yeah, so that's a mess. Because you have to, and you have to protect yourself as well. I mean, you're an organization. I get like probably 2,000, 3,000 inquiries every year from people who are dealing with the child welfare system. I cannot help everyone. It's impossible. But you can try to help someone. You can involve yourself in cases you really are committed to, or you think that, wow, this is something that I really want to engage myself in. You know? Follow your like gut feeling somehow. So the thing is to believe in yourself and don't let the government in any way take away your hope or dehumanize you or anything. And that's why this is so important, because these people are not gods. They're human beings. One day they will be dead as well. And it's extremely important to stand up for what you believe in, and the people who are actually in power and who are abusing their power, they should be exposed. Because they have decided to, when you decide to become a judge, you take on an obligation to respect the law, like the Constitution. And if you ignore that Constitution, you will destroy hundreds of people's lives as a judge instead of helping them. And they should not be accepted from the law, they should be held accountable. Because, and that's what we're trying to do in Norway now, to say that, hey, the people are not as stupid as the elite wanted them to be. So we have a proof here with 5 convictions from the highest court in Europe saying that Norway is systematically violating the human rights. But we need to hold people responsible for it. The ones who violated these families' rights and destroyed these families, they must be held accountable. So that's a big job to do as well, too, because otherwise, I don't think we will have tremendous changes before the people who are accountable actually are brought to justice. So you need to continue. That's why I'm actually supporting, you know. I don't know these people, but of course I realize that some of you are upset with these people. That's quite clear. But I think that these people are not worth anything more than we are. So when these people, judges or whoever they are ruining or destroying other people's life, you have to hold them accountable somehow. And we talked a little bit about it yesterday. So what can you really do to make further progress? I mean, coming to these conventions or seminars is a good way to start. And I think that we have these good T-shirts that actually made some attention when we were in Hobbiton yesterday as well, because one of the guys back, he looked at the flag and said, "Oh, are you from?" I know that one flag, Norway, said, "Oh, Barnevernet." And that's the Norwegian word for this. That's a difficult word for me to explain. So you see, so he recognized the flag on the back and said that he was aware of what's going on in Norway. He was from Germany, by the way. So and another woman from Lithuania said that wonderful T-shirts, we should have them back in Lithuania, a small country in Europe. So you see that so it's obviously that we can create a lot, and I think social media is the #1 platform to do it, because these days we definitely depend upon the social media. But back to where I try to what can we do now about how can we proceed further? And I think there are 3 ways to do it. Of course, there are many ways, but if we try the Norwegian model, since we have succeeded a little bit there, I think there are some ways you can do it. I think I will encourage you to, as an organization, to ally with some human rights defenders, whether they're lawyers or not, here in New Zealand, who can promote cases before the domestic New Zealand legal system, where you actually claim violations of the UN International Human Rights Act. Saying that, hey, you know, in Norway we are applying Article 8 of this Convention of Human Rights, and the equivalent part in the UN Charter is Article 17. So you can start by saying to your lawyer or your organization that I want to sue my government for violation of Article 17 of the UN Convention on Social and Political Freedoms. Because New Zealand has an obligation to respect that charter. That will bring a new aspect to the legal system, because instead of defending yourself, you will start to attack.
What does that article say?
It says respect for biological family. Article 17 of the Social and Political Convention on Human Rights in the UN. So it's basically, it has only 2 sentences to it, but it's protection about family life. Protection of family life. And by starting to actually apply that article onto in the New Zealand courts, you will start to fight back instead of defending yourself. Because when you are going into courts now, there will be like a state lawyer probably saying that you are not fit to have this child, blah, 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 and they will take the child away from you, which they're doing in Norway. So that's one way to do it, to start to apply the UN conventions in your domestic judiciary. The second part we talked about yesterday is to go together, to try to get as many people as possible to get together. I mean, you obviously have different groups being attacked by the government. To start what we call back in Europe for a class action, you call it something, a group action or something here. Yeah. But a class action is the legal word for it, and you are entitled to file a class action before the UN committee if you have more or less the identical kinds of cases. Yeah. I mean, if you have been, for instance, Marius, if they have been as a group, indigenous group being persecuted by the government for generations, that would be classified as a class action according to the UN treaty statutories. So that should be something, because if you raise an application to the UN committee for violation of family rights, that will definitely bring the attention also to the rest of the world, or at least it will bring more attention that New Zealand is not as perfect as people tend to believe. And that's what we have to do in Norway, because it's exactly what happened in Norway. I was hammering on the door to the government saying that, hey, you were violating the human rights. I said that for 10 years without anyone listening. So then I started to realize I have to get support from the international community. And then something started to happen, because I started to go to other countries. I started to go to former communist countries and Eastern European countries who have really experienced what it is to have a communistic side. They have grown up in a communistic regime, whereas a totalitarian regime, see? And then something started to happen, because the Norwegian government didn't like that we were approaching other countries. And the other countries were actually supporting us, because they realized that something was going on in Norway that was not correct. So that was the key to open the door to the international tribunals as well. Because if it wasn't for the contact with the international community, the international tribunals wouldn't have listened to us either. But they started to realize that, there are thousands of children being taken away in Norway, and many of these children are from foreign families. They are not Norwegian citizens, maybe Czech citizens, or American citizens, or Russian citizens. So that was a breakthrough. And then, so that's what I can encourage you to do here as well, to get more international attention to what's going on here. And the third part, of course, is to, and which is the most, probably the most drastic thing to do, but I think it's possible maybe. I don't know, but you can make an inquiry. You can approach the International Criminal Court in Hague, in Netherlands, which are dealing with genocides among other things. Genocide doesn't necessarily mean that a state is killing people. It also means that a state is deliberately persecuting indigenous people, for instance, or a group of people. So if you can prove, and when I was talking with Marius a few days ago, they claim to have sufficient evidence but they needed some guidance in how to proceed. I mean, one thing is to have the evidence in front of you. Another thing is how to present it to the international society. That's a different matter. So these, if you do these things, I mean, on an individual basis, you should start to attack the. I know a lot of you are self-litigants, aren't you? Yeah.
Can you explain this? I don't want self-litigant. Sorry.
But you're representing yourself, right?
Sorry.
So if you look up Article 17 in the Social and Political Convention of Human Rights in the UN, and if you say to the government that actually you are attacking the government by saying that you are violating Article 17 of the Convention, then you will have a completely different ballgame, because now you're not just defending yourself, you're attacking. I think that can bring tremendous changes to what's going on here. I think that one of the primary things for Families for Justice to do is to try to collaborate with other groups and try to go bigger, so that you also can file a class action to the UN committee, or at least to the committee. So you have several different committees in the UN where you can file petitions, meaning that you can make them aware of what's going on here. And you can also do the last thing to really go for inquiry in the International Criminal Court.
We could actually do a petition and send it to the DI and get people.
Position.
So how you do it is up to you. I'm just trying to raise some ideas how we've been doing things in Norway. And
Did you petition?
we've been brought like hundreds of petitions to the European Parliament.
And how did they go?
Well, they have been going well. That's the reason why we have been convicted so many times in the European Court, because we have been able to raise awareness.
Yep. So you think that would maybe be something we could do as a group, to petitions like that?
I think that would be awesome. I mean, to bring human rights petition to the right organizations or to the right institutions is the way to do it. And I'm not going to say how you will do it, but I'm just trying to give you a brief idea about how we've been doing this in Norway, and at least we've had some success with it. And as I told you in the beginning, that finally the Norwegian people are waking up, saying that, hey, you have the Norwegian judiciary has actually deceived its own people for generations. That's what the European Court says, that they have deprived the human rights. Yes?
Why aren't you using Red Cross? Why aren't you using Red Cross?
The microphone?
Why aren't you using Red
Why are you
Cross?
using Red Cross?
Because we're supporting these sort of things, and
Why we are not using Red Cross, or?
I mean,
Red Cross is not I've never thought about bringing Red Cross into this conflict. They have a different mission. So I never even thought about that.
Oprah?
What is that?
Now it's over.
Huh?
I'll get Keanu Reeves.
We need to find out one in New Zealand. Who's that one in New Zealand?
That's what you have to do. You have to
Run a show.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you have to bring the right people and
See, you have to follow through, don't you? You have to follow through and be strong.
yeah.
Yep. If you don't follow through, it's just weird.
And that's what Steve told as well, that he's been affected as a middle class man, and he has no intention to surrender, and that's what you should do as well. So you just no matter how hard it feels like, you just have to bring it up. And I think you can do it. I mean, you have a very dedicated group, and you are obviously thousands of people across the country being affected. The question is how to unite all these people and how to come up stronger.
And keep them strong.
Yeah.
So you've obviously got an organisation similar to Families for Justice back home.
Yeah, we have some.
And is there a financial commitment? Does it run, do members contribute actually to pay for lawyers and things?
Well, the system in Norway is that if you have been affected by the child welfare system, you get some, the money will pay for your lawyer, the government will pay for your lawyers.
Okay.
But the problem is that they can more or less pick the lawyers for you. So it's not like, I wouldn't say it's independent, and the lawyers are of course dependent on the government because they pay the salary.
It used to be different here in New Zealand, but now legal aid lawyers are appointed rather than go to your lawyer. It's legal aid.
Yeah, they're appointed by the system.
Now,
Which is-
that has changed, so that's our rights going.
Yeah.
So the people, the 5 convictions you're talking about, or all those people involved in that part of this, your version of Justice for Families?
You mean the organizations?
Yeah.
No, they were not involved in the convictions.
Right.
But, well, that's not exactly right, because there were lots of organizations in Europe involved,
Yeah.
where there were a lot of other countries involved, meaning that they made an intervention on the people's side. So in a way, a lot of organizations, but that was across Europe as well. But we had organizations as an organization. Family for Justice can be an organization who is making an intervention in support of the people for the UN Committee, for instance. That is possible.
So as an outcome of those 5 convictions, does it actually change anything?
Yes, I think so, because we've already seen that the domestic courts now are starting to return children in a way they never did before.
Okay.
So I would definitely say that even though we have a way to go, they have started to comply with each other. So, and of course, the families who are involved take advantage of it, saying that, hey, we have 5 convictions in the European court, they apply to me as well, so return my child as quickly as possible. So you see like there is a speeding process, the process of it speeding up. So that's good. And that's definitely what you have to do here as well, since you are, if the child has been taken, you are fighting to get it back, right?
And the jurisdiction of that court is the same in regards to New Zealand as it is to Norway?
Yeah, the UN Committee has the same jurisdiction as Norway to New Zealand.
So theoretically, I could go there and say to the New Zealand government, say these 5 people, these 5 people won their, been offended against, they won their case.
Yeah.
I'm looking for the same thing.
Because-
we could just say, rephrase that. So we could use those 5 cases as precedents for our case. If you don't want to reinvent the wheel, do you start from scratch?
You can use them as precedents for your own case because since you are a part of the UN Convention.
Yeah.
You have that Article 17, which is equivalent to Article 8. And, so that's definitely possible. That's what I would have, if I was a New Zealand lawyer, I would definitely have done that, saying that we have precedents already in these 5 judgments. So apply, use them. That's what
I was wondering if you know if there's any statistics on parents that kill, say, the people that have taken their children from them. They take justice in their own hands, they have killed the people that they just said, you know, is there any statistics on that? Not suicide, I mean, they go and commit homicide to the people that have actually taken the children. Yeah.
I don't have any, I don't think that has happened in Norway, but I'm not sure.
I'm just wondering.
I would have, we would have known about it. But the suicidal rate.
I mean, my friend did that once, his grandparents, his partner's grandparents had taken the children's daughter, and he went and got a gun and sat there and blew the gun over the house and give me back my daughter, and, you know, so I'm wondering if people are pushed to such a point where they take justice. There is no justice, and this frustration causes them to take it into their own hands. Whether it's recorded or not.
I don't know about the statistics in Norway. I don't think I'm not familiar with any cases in Norway, but
Right.
But you're highlighting 3 areas. The first area was sue parliamentarian for breaches. And we can, that's something
sue the
practical.
government for
The government,
the
yeah.
government. I mean, the government breaches.
And the second point you made was with the breaking of section 17, which talks about the protection of the family, getting a petition together. That's something practical we can work on. And then you talked about the criminal court in Hague, where we could take file a report against them or whatever. So
Yeah.
this is something we're going to have to start thinking.
This is something you can start thinking about, and that's something practical that will take you some steps further in the fight. And we're doing exactly the same thing in Norway. We're waiting for some more convictions coming in the European Court, but when we have reached 10 convictions, we will probably file a class action to the ICC, the International Criminal Court.
So I mean, actual convictions where they've broken the law, you've proven it.
Yeah, we're proving it. We have already proven it 5 times.
And what do you sue them for?
Crimes against humanity.
Crimes against humanity. And do you make a claim on so much money or what?
Well, the thing is that I think it will work this way, that if the ICC will bring on a case like that and they will find Norway guilty in crimes against humanity, they will not, the compensation will be stand out till the Norwegian system to solve,
Yeah.
because the ICC is not in a position to do that, but it will be a very clear signal for the government to an international society as well, that Norway actually was one of the bad guys in the ICC. Only the bad guys come to the ICC. It's the worst cases coming back.
I see a case for international trauma in this country, generational trauma, particularly the Maori people. A number of injustices that have gone on there over the years, in the last 50 million years, and I've been held accountable for that.
So that's why I think, and the interesting part is on March 2nd this year, a group from the UN will come to Oslo, Norway to discuss an allegation from the gypsies in Norway, which are similar to the Maoris, about genocides in Norway. And genocide doesn't necessarily mean killing by force, it means like they have eradicated sort of like a group's rights.
Gypsies.
Gypsies, yeah. So from 1960 until 1983, 1,500 gypsies were taken from their families because of the gypsies. And just because they wanted them to be integrated in the Norwegian society itself. 1,500, approximately 1,500.
Crime against humanity, isn't it?
Can I ask a question? So how would you start to do your own, like, where would you start to represent yourself? What would be the best starting point to,
Well, self-representation is good in a way, but I think you also need to, it takes a lot of work, because you have to study the laws and
that's what city was like.
so I think, but I mean, using an organization as a third-party intervention could be a way to do it. So if maybe Families for Justice could have like a third-party approval for third-party intervention in these cases, that could be a start, because you're stronger with an organization behind than by yourself. Because I don't know how it is with judges in New Zealand, but in Norway, the judges will not take you seriously if you are self-represented. You will lose automatically.
So you got to speak, imagine you got it.
But they have the power, the judges have the power to force it to bring on the judge, no an attorney.
The same thing, you don't know who the judge is going to be.
So it seems like the right to be self-represented is probably in New Zealand and
It's just the trust in lawyers is gone, honestly. I've tried to get a lawyer in Hamilton and my lawyer I did have, and I saw it being corrupt, she stopped me getting
The lawyers depend on the money they get from the government.
Yeah.
Very hard. That's the
They
thing.
make decisions without them. You know, that's why I kept my lawyer and I haven't been able to find another.
I think that can be a very good thing for Families for Justice to be, to get more involved in the legal processes maybe, to be an organization that can be representing or can intervene in cases where people are self-represented. Yeah, support.
Is there much known about what happens to children in a way like here? It's coming out, there's a lot of abuse. Orang sama ada juga got caught So, yeah, it's just what is known in other countries about what happens.
Well, we know that 75% of the children in care are facing problems later in life. Big problems, either in jail or so. I was surprised to hear 86% of the people in public care or inmates, and they have been through the public care system. But it's definitely a huge problem everywhere on this planet.
That's what it is, for the kids.
Actually, it's true, Steve, we need to appoint this legal committee and start working on.
Yeah, so as an organization, you have like legal rights to represent or at least intervene with the families involved. And that's something you should definitely start to consider. Because otherwise you have to think about how to proceed with the next move.
Is it another?
They're of course a part of the
We don't take it for Can we do a separate fact also surrounding this?
That can be brought to the offense. I don't know how you will do that legally, but if you have obviously a lot of people, if you have a lot of people committing suicide, it's a way you can tell that the state has like let its people down when it comes to protect life and health. That can be a way to do it, because you have the most important articles in these international treaties are the ones that are protecting life and health.
And I think you know, sorry, Marius. So what are some things we should, I know you've done a lot of positive, what's some legal things we need to talk about that we may
What you have to look out for?
Yeah, just what we may have done, sort of in the overall.
What you have to
question. Sorry, it's just something I want to know. I can help you with it. I mean, sorry. Yes, lots more than
No, there will be plenty of negative things all the time. You were working in the minefield. I mean, so you have to be prepared for anything. Of course, if you are starting to challenge the New Zealand government with human rights breaches, they will come after you. So, but you don't have much to lose, I think. Because, I mean, you've already lost what you have. So I think it's more a question about what can you have to think in an alternative way.
So you have to just be on board, be on board and just one of the ways that they bring up something, just make sure you're literally know what your rights are.
You have to pursue your rights.
Rights are like muscles. If you don't exercise them, they atrophy and die. So yeah.
That's definitely what you have to do. It's as easy as that. You have to start to pursue your basic rights. But what has happened to you as a group, or what has happened to the people in Norway, is that these rights have been systematically deprived from you. You have been a victim, a deliberate victim of it. Because that's how they need to harass a certain amount of people, or they need to violate a certain amount of people to keep the system going. Well, there are many judgments concerning hearsay as well that are needed to have substantial evidence. But
What if they don't have the right facts or anything, it's just written in black and white?
But it sounds like you have the same system in Norway, that if you have this hearsay and if the government or the judges don't like you as a person, you can easily be tried in hearsay as well. It's very easy to be convicted in Norway without any substantial evidence.
Because the government has to have their proof, don't they? Like, they're not.
Okay,
Well, they should have to, but they're not.
You know, they have nothing to back them up, they'll believe whatever.
okay, let's let me make it an example from my own life, which has to do with hearsay. I've been in a constant conflict with the Norwegian government for 15 years, and of course, obviously, the government and the judges don't like me that much because I'm pursuing human rights. So in 2009, I was attacked. I was in a courtroom with another lawyer, and there were only him and me there. And so there were no evidence, just talk between him and me. No video surveillance, nothing. But he accused me of being physically big, which I am quite big. So he said I intimidated him according to the Norwegian acts. And I got convicted without any evidence. And I had to serve 30 days in prison. Because, and it stated in the judgment that there was lacking no evidence that I intimidated this guy or anything. But since I'm physically big, that was enough to be convicted. So that you probably can relate to that a little bit as well. And of course, some people, because this has been a big case in Norway, because being convicted without evidence. But some people say, but did you really threaten? Did you make him scared in any way? And I say, it doesn't matter what you believe, because you need to have substantial evidence, right? So whether you believe in my version or not, it all comes down to evidence. If there was a video camera there, it would have been okay if I
So do you actually, like, every time you go in court, that would be private, you're not allowed to video stuff, can you?
in Norway, you're not allowed to bring video.
Can you also, like, I wasn't here yesterday, so we talked about Waitangi, for instance.
Yeah, the same thing. That
And just because you
a
were
little bit.
intimidating.
Yeah, that's.
Because I wasn't here yesterday,
But that's a way to get rid of people. You know?
Yes.
That's a perfect way to get rid of people who don't like you. And that's why I got involved with these people who are being affected by the child welfare system as well, because I can see that many of them don't fit into this Norwegian normal box, to put it that way. They may have some issues with the system, or
Do you think that,
they're being easily targeted. Yeah.
do you think that, when we talk about a person of interest and everyone being on the started place, and even Steve sort of felt that he was held in contempt of court or something like that. Do you think it's a conspiracy to think that they could have our numbers? It could be against you because you're...
Yeah, I believe so.
That they can follow you and track
They do,
you.
they take people's Wi-Fi.
Do you think that goes on, please?
Yeah. They've tapped my Wi-Fi now.
I think they tap my wife. They pay a lot of attention to my trip here in New Zealand.
Yeah, because that's one of
Because
the
that makes them
reasons.
insecure. What is it
Yeah.
doing there?
That's the
Telling you
excuse
about
that
more.
people who've been attacked by the system use. They're either too traumatized or they're afraid either.
Let me put you with an example from Norway about that, because a very brave woman, she supported an Indian family whose children were taken So that she gave like, so she made the support all the way to the Indian Prime Minister, because India wanted that child back. And of course, when India with its 1.5 million people going to say we want the child back, Norway gives it back, right?
So that's the numbers give my child back.
Exactly. So the child was returned to the family within days. But anyhow, this woman who supported India, she was attacked in the Norwegian system for supporting India. So the government lawyer in that case said that she's like working with other nations, so we have to attack her. She's an enemy of our state, and that was actually used as an argument for taking her child.
But then she got her numbers out behind her, and that helped.
So she said it comes with a very high price to stand up for others.
But it's worth it, it's worth it. It is worth it to stand up regardless of what they do.
Exactly.
It's your dignity, it's your pride, it's yours. So that's what you're applying. And you can try to protect your child.
But Steve I think Steve is a good example. He looks like a middle-class man, a middle-aged man with some money in his back, gray hair, and looks like an ordinary citizen, to put it that way, or a decent citizen. But since he has been in conflict with the system, there's already a red flag on him. So no matter what he's doing in the system, he will be persecuted somehow. And that's something you have to be aware of. So when you're telling me what's the obstacles, you have to be aware that if you are not complying with the ordinary system, you have to be prepared for anything.
So you just be in the lines, just don't overstep the line because they target it.
But I think that people who are willing to take that risk are the ones who are moving the society forward. Because otherwise you will be stuck in this. And then you can make protests outside parliament with tens of thousands of people, or you can make hundreds of conferences like this, but it probably is not going to take you any longer.
Because I don't know, it's sort of made that pact with sorry, Diane, I can't pronounce it yet. They made that pact on the baby stuff, but like, I'm not racist, but what about us? Sorry, Diane, I do.
It's okay.
What about our European pact? Like, do we start our own group to see if we can get a deal? No. So I don't know, I'm not, we support you guys, like, sorry, not being racist.
We have to go
You
together.
have to definitely go together. That's interesting, you see, that's very interesting, because when I posted a picture from the Maoris of the Waitangi, the Samis in Norway started, we gotta get together. The indigenous groups in Norway saw that picture. So we're facing exactly the same problems. We just have to make this a global movement.
Because Wendy, if groups like Whānau Ora are going to make headway against Oranga Tamariki and so on, with the stated aim of benefiting Maori people, that's a flow-on effect for all of us.
I wasn't turning in negative statement, but it was good progress. Like,
But I see her point, it becomes a little bit racist at times, because a lot of Europeans are not defending themselves, and we go in on the coattails of the Maori people, but we've got no representation for the whites, and even the media use it against us. So it's imperative for the future we have to work together. We can't just be individuals. The whole system uses it against us.
But what concerns me in Norway as well as in New Zealand is that, I mean, you should have had like thousands of people coming out for these events.
That's right. They're all
And in
white.
Norway it's the same, it's like 30, 40, 50 people coming. But the majority is like passive, silent. They are. Someone else will take care of it.
Even though they are.
We're known as
So they end up dying in June.
Take something. It's easier to go to a shopping center.
That's why a lot of immigrations in New Zealand, because they put out specific jobs for people that they can't find here in New Zealand, because it's quite a lazy culture, right? So instead of the boys going out and not being on the benefit and picking some apples, they're like, nah, and they get
people in from other cultures to do it, and then they're complaining, oh, well, we've got problems, blah, blah, blah. Oh, hello, if you guys got a butts and started your job, or we can, you know, and, you know, maybe we wouldn't have to call these people from university to come over and take these high-paying jobs, like surgeons and stuff, and like there should be like a lot of more emphasis on supporting our children to become educated.
And I find it amazing, it's not the Asians who commit suicide, it's our own common Pākehā people.
We have approximately 700-800 suicides. And I think more than 50% are related to people who are problems with their childhood.
And it's expensive to live in New Zealand as well, that's one thing, it's so expensive. Everything is in New Zealand. It's ridiculous.
Most of our housing's owned by foreigners. My family is a huge family, and I don't see my family having a family home.
So
Yes, Diane.
when someone is born in Norway and the parent registers the child, you have that process over there? Yes. Well, over here, when a Māori is born and registered, straight away that Māori there's state funding for that Māori child. So if something happens throughout their life, the government can come and say, oh, you need housing, here you go, here's a house. Oh, you need healthcare, here you go, here's, you know. So Māori are already tied the minute their parents sign that registration. That birth certificate is just, you're just a straw man, really. It's just a piece of paper. I'm probably going off a totally different subject, but...
So if a child is connected to a tribe,
No, it wasn't that.
yeah, and you realise that they are eventually down the line,
Yeah.
and they actually are connected to like the funding that they get from that tribe,
Yeah.
does that include them in that too? Even though they're a white child?
Yeah, if you're registered,
Okay.
you can get that funding.
Yeah, there is funding there.
Yeah, but with the birth certificate, so what Māori are trying to do is get themselves deregistered and claim annuities.
Yeah,
You know, they should be able to claim annuities.
they don't want to be a citizen.
Yes,
To register is to sign over title ownership.
Yes.
Creates a trust with legal
yes, there's
equitable
trust already
titles.
there, there's
You're the
funding
meat
already
stick
there.
for the birth certificate. So once you're registered, that becomes property of the state.
Yeah.
You're all chattel property, you're all
Yes.
held at land information in New Zealand.
Yes.
It's land, you're all land.
There you go.
How many, what's the same way with adoption in Norway? As in,
Well, that's quite easy. It's, you just take the child into public care, and after a while, the government will claim that the child has been so attached to its foster parents that it should be adopted. That's how it is.
So what I was getting at, why should we register under a government? Why can't we register under our iwi?
Yeah.
You know?
That's a good point. I think a lot of people around the world are thinking the same.
I mean, another solution is to also make more of your family a whānau and legal guardians for your children. You don't have to have just mum and dad, you can have other guardians, so that the state has more people to get through before they get their call on.
Protect the family.
But that's talking about having a separate state for Māori and non-Māori.
Looking at separating and dividing.
So it's separatism.
I kind of think that if you've got a history of generations in your family name, I think that New Zealand's government needs to start looking at declaring that family as part of the culture. As, no. I'm just European.
Past 20 years.
Yeah, well, I just believe that they need to recognise what families, their lines and that all together, yeah. Because I come back generations.
20 years.
But as long as you're born here in New Zealand, you are a New Zealand citizen, right?
Yeah.
So I'm trying to test this theory. So I've got a grandchild who's going to be 7 months soon. I have not registered him. So
No,
he,
you've got up to 2
technically
years
he's
to
an
register.
alien.
You have up to 2 years, so when he hits 2 years, then you're going to start getting letters from the MSD.
Yeah, that's
saying,
what I want to
You haven't
find out.
registered your child.
What are you
yet,
gonna
blah,
do
blah,
to
blah.
me because I didn't register this child?
Well, and then he can't get a passport, or she. And
Well, that's
20
fine.
years. And
They can never be taken.
can't ever travel around the world.
Well, you can travel without a passport, you just need travel documents. Absolutely. We were talking to a lady yesterday who stayed last night.
Yes,
She
travel
doesn't have a
documents.
passport, but she
Yeah.
can travel with travel documents.
And this, do you know about the flag, He Whakaputanga 1835? This is the flag that can take you across all the borders. It's before the Treaty of Waitangi, the Southern flag. That flag can get you through the ports.
There is a way to do it.
Yeah.